Going to call this meeting to order. This is the Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration, meeting number 17, Thursday, May 14th, 2009. We have two items on the agenda for today. The first is committee business, which is a motion by Monsieur Saint-Cyr, of which you have all received his notice of motion. And secondly, pursuant to Standing Order 108-2, a study of ghost consultants and migrant workers. So the first item, as has been agreed, is the motion by Monsieur Saint-Cyr. Monsieur, if you could, if you just give me a second, if you could read your motion and say a few words, please. First of all, did you have a point of order?
I just wanted to ask, Chair, wasn't this sent to the subcommittee?
I got a notice of motion that we received last week, and we're going to allow Monsieur Saint-Cyr to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The motion I presented reads as follows. Notwithstanding the fact that the motion was sent to the committee May 7th last, that the committee proceed immediately and without further delay with the clause-by-clause consideration of Bill C-291, and that this clause-by-clause consideration be completed before the committee undertakes any other business. The reason why I am presenting this motion, Mr. Chair, is because when we met last Tuesday to work on the committee's agenda, I had agreed that we work on the current study on ghost consultants and migrant workers on the condition that we conclude clause-by-clause study of Bill C-291 on the Refugee Appeal Division for last Thursday. But last Thursday after our work, we only had 5 minutes left to vote on the only provision of the bill. There was a dilatory motion moved by the Conservatives and supported by the Liberals. Obviously, they had met in advance because there was no debate on the motion, and the object of that motion was to postpone indefinitely the study of my bill, C-291, which Parliament has had agreed to 8 years ago for the first time when the Refugee Appeal Division was to be implemented. In 2004, this committee unanimously supported that idea, and in the last Parliament, an identical bill was adopted with the support of the Liberals and the NDP. And this time, again, the Liberals originally supported this bill. You have to be consistent. You can't support the bill in the House and in committee and then agree with such a dilatory tactic which tries to camouflage the hypocrisy of the fact of supporting publicly a bill but privately blocking its passage. I understand that the Conservatives are trying to delay this bill. They're against it, so they're acting in good faith. But I am today offering the Liberals to show that they are acting in good faith. I'm asking them to support this bill. There were 5 minutes left to the meeting. All we need is 5 minutes, really, to pass the bill. And I would like to remind committee members that although at times we like to put on a good show for the media, don't forget that our first duty is to vote on and pass legislation. That's our job, and I really don't like the idea of delaying until the fall work on this bill, whereas it would only take 5 minutes to pass. I think this is important to, rather than hold deliberations which are made for the media. Now, with that, I would invite all members, especially Liberal members, to demonstrate their good faith and to go into clause-by-clause study of my bill. It'll take 5 minutes, and then we can send the bill to the House.
The motion does contradict a motion of last Thursday, but the chair does hold the motion to be in order. And I have a list of speakers. Mr. Dijkstra.
I will, based on, I'm going to be supporting what I think is a motion to move this back to the steering committee.
That isn't what the motion says.
Voting against the motion.
Steering committee.
I didn't really have my hand up to speak.
Mr. Karagianis.
I didn't hear what Mr. Dijkstra said. I'm sorry.
Sure.
He's passing. He's not speaking.
Oh, okay.
Chair, we had a motion to send this to the subcommittee. That was agreed upon. It was voted upon. Mr. Sincere coming back and dumping all over his colleagues in the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party is certainly not greatly appreciated. It's like a little child that says, well, if you're not going to play my way, I'm going to take my marbles and go home. That is not what we're here for. This motion was sent to the subcommittee. It should be studied there and then brought back to us in order for us to take another look at it. It was clear. It was passed. Why are we rehashing the same old thing again? So I would make a motion, Chair, that we send this motion to the subcommittee.
Well, there's a motion on the floor. Ms. Mendes.
Moi, j'aimerais juste préciser quelque chose.
I just would like to point out something for my colleague, Mr. Saint-Cyr, if I may, Mr. Chairman. I am one of the MPs who asked for the motion to be sent back to the subcommittee for the simple reason that we raised the matter where people waiting for their claims to be processed to be assessed adequately by the commissioners who sit on a tribunal. The appeal division, and in fact, I do agree that it should be created. However, because we have heard from some witnesses who have said that the process may be slowed down, it might be better.
I'd like you to speak to the motion.
I am speaking to the motion.
Well,
so
you're
I'm
getting
just
on
saying that our intention in sending it off to subcommittee was to study it better. Is there a possibility? So I'm not in any way against the basic motion. I was one of the ones that proposed that we send it to subcommittee to study it a little more. Because I did think that there was alternatives to strictly the Board of Appeal. Okay? So that was my point.
Monsieur Saint-Cyr.
Monsieur le Président.
Well, Mr. Chairman, allow me to point out, because people are telling me that I'm trying to change our agenda, the reason we're here is because we had agreed to finish clause-by-clause study on Thursday. So if we change the agenda once, we can do it again. The study has been completed. No more witnesses need to be heard. Parliament has already studied the bill in the course of the previous Parliament. Committee members have unanimously supported the implementation of the Refugee Appeal Division. This happened back in 2004. So this is a tactic on the part of the Conservatives. We know they're against the creation of the division. Don't understand why the Liberals are acting the way they are. I don't see how the subcommittee can or would want to work on this issue this spring or this summer. It can only be dealt with in the fall, and I don't know, we should wait until then. We've been waiting for this for 8 years already. So for all of those reasons, I think this is a great opportunity for the Liberals to demonstrate their good faith by supporting the motion. Let's finally deal with it. Let's send it to the House. And, Mr. Chair, I would ask for a recorded vote on the motion.
Yeah. All those, recorded vote, Mr. Chair, or Mr. Clerk, all those in favor of the motion.
Mr. Calandra? Mr. Dijkstra?
That notwithstanding the referral motion adopted Thursday, May 7th, the committee proceed immediately and without further delay with the clause-by-clause consideration of Bill C-291, and that this clause-by-clause consideration be completed before the committee undertakes any other business. We're in the middle of a vote. I have a vote. One person spoken. Mr. Calandra, would you?
Mr. Dykstra? Madam Greywall? Mr. Shorey? Mrs. Wong? Mr. Karagianis? Oh, excuse me. Madam Mendes? Monsieur Payet? Monsieur Saint-Cyr? Madam Mathieson? I count 6 noes, 3 yeas.
What? 6 noes,
3 yeas.
3 yeas. There's 4 people over there.
Madam Mathieson voted no.
The motion fails. Okay, we're now going to continue on to the second item of our agenda. Mr. Dijkstra.
We had agreed that we were going to spend an hour with these witnesses and then another hour with the following witnesses. We are now into this by about an additional 10 to 15 minutes. I want to make sure that we are going to have an hour, and we'll get all our rounds of questioning in.
Well, that's
even
tough.
If we need to
it's
extend.
Tough division, Mr. Dijkstra. We'd also agreed that Monsieur Saint-Cyr would have his motion, and I followed those instructions. I'm at the mercy of the committee, whatever the committee wants to do. Mr.
In order to accommodate everybody, can I just make a friendly motion or movement that the first round is 5 minutes and every other round after that is 4 minutes, so we all get our chance to go in?
4, what did you say, 4 and
5 and 4.
5 and 4. I see no opposition to that.
Andrew, me down.
So we're now proceeding with some witnesses that some guests that we've invited. I see. I'm going to assume here who you are. I see Migrant Ontario Amy Bebasso. Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
It's Amy.
Excuse me?
I-me.
Amy. Thank you. I'm sorry. And we have Agatha Mason, who is the Executive Director of Interseat. Welcome to the committee. I'm going to suggest that each of you have 5 minutes to make introductory comments. We're pressed for time, so if you could stick to that, I would appreciate it. Ms. Bebasso, you are first on the list, so we'll let you proceed. Welcome again.
We have somebody here, my colleague, who went to the washroom.
Oh, well, we'll wait for that person to proceed, but we'll carry on with the meeting when that person returns. Okay? Ms. Bebasso.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you for having us. My name is Amy Biboso, and I'm a board member of the Philippine Migrant Society of Canada, grassroots organizations here in Ottawa, and we're a member of Migrante Ontario. We represent migrant workers. Our majority of our membership are live-in caregivers that work under the live-in caregiver program.
Ms. Mason, did you wish to make some introductory comments?
I can't hear you. I had a terrible flight coming in here. My ears are blocked up. I'm not hearing you clearly.
You can't hear me? You say you cannot hear me?
Okay, I'm hearing you now.
Okay.
Let me help you.
There's earphones here.
Okay. Yes, I was getting mine.
And I draw to your attention, to both of you, there are earphones. You've figured it out, Ms. Bebasso, it's good. And sometimes we will speak English, sometimes we will speak French in here. And
You'll find it much better.
so,
Someone was, when speaking French, just turn this until you get English.
Okay.
no,
And there's a volume control here.
Ms. Did you hear me now, Ms. Mason?
Clearly.
Yes. Ms. Quash attends. She's welcome, but we have to keep moving.
Okay.
So do you have some introductory comments, Ms. Mason?
Well, actually, she was going to do the introductory comments, so I'll
Okay.
for the other person to
We're going to proceed with questions. The committee will suspend for a minute, Ms. Mason. We'll suspend until Ms. Quash returns. Okay, we're going to reconvene. Ms. Eunice Quash of Intercede, welcome to the committee.
Apologies.
When you were away, I indicated that you would have up to 5 minutes to make some introductory comments.
Okay.
If you wish to make any, you may not wish to make any, but you're quite welcome to make some introductory comments. And as you know, we're here to study ghost consultants and migrant workers. So welcome.
Thank you. My apologies for being late.
No, it's quite all right.
Yeah.
And that earpiece is to, A, help us hear better, and secondly, both French and English is spoken at this committee. Start that as soon as she... Go ahead, Ms. Quash.
Okay. My name is Eunice Quash. I'm the Secretary of the Board of Directors for Intercede and a member of the Executive Committee. Intercede for the Rights of Domestic Workers, Caregivers and Newcomers is a non-profit agency which is funded through the contribution agreement from the Immigration Settlement and Adaptation Program, ISAP, and a grant from the City of Toronto Community Service Program. We are governed by a board of directors that represent a broad cross-section of the community to include persons who have been through the Living Care Program. An executive director, 5-member staff provide service 5 to 9 from Monday to Friday and twice monthly on Saturdays and Sundays. The mandate for Intercede is to provide free and confidential service to domestic workers, caregivers, newcomers and their families. Our service include immigration counseling, job search, newcomers orientation workshop, special workshop, referrals, advocacy, educating clients on their rights and responsibility as stipulated in the Ontario Employment Standard Act and accompaniment. An increasing number of caregivers under the Living Care Program have disclosed many various forms of violation ranging from unpaid wages to sexual abuse. In collaboration with other agencies, we have always sought to provide support to all our clients where possible. We have had many successes, and we have also had myriad of challenges. approximately 60% of Interseed's clients are from the Philippines, while the remainder are from many countries around the world, including China, Japan, India, Jamaica, Peru, Ecuador, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Nigeria, Ghana, Mauritius, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Trinidad, Guyana, Hong Kong, Venezuela, St. Kitts, Antigua, and Russia. Many clients have used the service of employment agencies to enter Canada under the Living Care program, and in some instances have been released upon arrival. That means facing unemployment, creating stress and anxiety. The Living Care program allows caregivers only 3 years in which to work and pay taxes for 24 months to become eligible to apply for landed status, immigrant status. The Living Care program, as it is currently structured, poses many challenges for caregivers. Many caregivers find it difficult to succeed in the program. Interseed has always taken the stand that ideally caregivers should be allowed to enter Canada as a landed immigrant. Failing that, the program should be reviewed and allowed for the following changes. 1, caregivers should have the option to live in or out of the employer's home. Work permit should not specify a particular employer so as to facilitate easily change of employers for caregivers who are already legally permitted to work in Canada. OHIP numbers should not be different to help eradicate discrimination. Special consideration should be given to caregivers who have experienced violations from employers. The waiting time for the renewal of permits should be reduced. The processing of labor violation claims should be expedited. Ensure that employer or potential employer is equipped to house caregivers. The process of permanent residence for family members should be expedited. Work contract for caregivers should clearly state the duties and responsibilities. The 3-year period should be extended. Caregivers should be allowed to attend school if their work schedules allow them the time to do so, and the caregiver program is broken, and all the bandages may be just a temporary fix. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. A hand is up, Ms. Barbosa, yes?
Hi, this is my first time as a witness in a standing committee. I wasn't clear that our introduction needed to be extensive. If you need more information on our organization,
Sure, I'll give you a few minutes. If
okay.
But
I wasn't clear on how extensive.
No, I understand that. If you're new, you're quite right. It's a new experience. You can give some introductory comments, Ms.
Right.
Barbosa.
So the Philippine Migrant Society of Canada, or Filipino Migrante sa Canada, our membership is over 100 women that are under the Live-in Caregiver program. Our objectives are to organize and mobilize overseas Filipinos and issues faced by Filipino migrants and the Filipino people, launch education campaigns aimed at raising the political consciousness of migrant Filipinos in Canada, provide assistance and services to Filipino migrant workers to improve their living and working conditions in Canada, support the struggle of the Filipino people for social justice, genuine freedom, and democracy. Key examples of key activities of our organization are organizing and education, which means that PMSC raises awareness about issues faced by migrant Filipinos through orientation sessions, discussion of study groups, video showings, information workshops, and public forums that highlight the common issues faced by migrant Filipinos in Canada. Campaigns, networking, and alliances, wherein PMSC is actively seeking changes to programs and policies that lead to the abuse and exploitation of migrant workers. A key focus is Canada's Live-in Caregiver program. Difficult working conditions faced by live-in caregivers can be traced to the fact that they are required to live and work in their employers' homes, which makes them vulnerable to forms of abuse other workers in Canada do not experience. common problems are long working hours and unpaid overtime. Given that live-in caregivers work under temporary work permits, they are tied to their employers' names. Their ability to get out of difficult situations is severely constrained. In launching its campaigns, PMSC works with organizations and networks that share its vision. We also do information and research, wherein PMSC gathers information and conducts research in order to keep migrant Filipinos in Canada aware of their rights. It publishes a regular newsletter to share information, news, stories of migrant workers. PMSC also conducts surveys and focus group discussions to learn more about the issues faced by migrant workers in Canada. Lastly, we also provide services wherein PMSC provides assistance to migrant Filipinos who seek help and justice for abuses committed against them. The organization also provides a range of services to its members, including Know Your Rights workshops, English as a second language classes, tax services, computer training, job placement, and CPR training. As part of building social networks among migrant Filipinos, PMSC also organizes social events for its members. As well, we have ongoing campaigns currently. I'm sure you guys have, if anything, you've heard of Bill 160 for recruitment agencies and the Juana Tejada law. That means to remove the second medical. The Juana Tejada law deals with removing the second medical examination once a live-in caregiver has finished the program and is applying for landed immigrant status. Thank you.
I'll just explain to you what we're going to do now. Each of the four political parties representatives will ask you questions on this topic. That will take 5 minutes for the questions and answers. So we will start off with Mr. Karagianis.
Good morning and welcome to the committee. Ms. Eunice, you said that you're getting funding from ISAP, I believe it is, and you're there to intercede and to help caregivers. And you're employing next number of people, and there's board members. Any of your board members on payroll?
No.
Okay.
No.
How much money per year do you receive in the last year and this year? How much money did you receive from ISAP?
Okay, I'll let Agatha answer that if you don't mind, as the executive director.
The contribution agreement allowed for $319,000.
And this
And we had a slippage of about $50,000.
And this is strictly to provide assistance for migrant workers and caregivers.
We provide services for what is referred to as ISAP eligible clients, meaning people who come through immigration in Canada and are eligible to work legally under the temporary foreign worker program. Our focus, though, is on live-in caregivers and caregivers who are
How many of
under
your,
the program.
the percentage of the funding that you get and the amount spent, how much of it is strictly for caregivers, percentage-wise?
When you say for caregivers, you're talking about in terms of program, and all of it is for programs.
So 100% of your focus is on caregivers?
Yeah.
Okay. So a caregiver comes in and she or he has 3 years in order to work and then apply for a permanent, an H&C, humanitarian compassionate grounds, in order to land permanently, right?
A caregiver has to work for 24 months and pay taxes within 3 years to be eligible to apply for landed status.
And then they apply from Vegreville.
And then?
They apply from Vegreville.
Yes.
And then their family gets processed overseas.
Yes.
And Vegreville takes about 3 to 4 years.
Yes, it can take up to 3 to 4 years.
Okay, and by the time the family gets reunited, it could be up to 6 years.
Yes, in some instances, in many instances, in fact, when caregivers leave places and have, for example, many of the caregivers we're seeing now from the Philippines have migrated to countries like Hong Kong, Japan, Israel. So by the time they come, the unification...
Ms. Mason, I'm fully aware of the numbers in the migration. I'm talking about Canada. It can take up to 6 years before a family can be united.
Yes.
So if a lady has a 2-year-old, by the time that 2-year-old gets united with a mother in Canada, he or she can be 8 years old.
Yes.
There's an injustice right there. The present system does not work.
Actually, I was going to address that.
The present system does not work, correct?
It is broken.
Okay. So let me offer you something else. Every caregiver that comes in gets what an entrepreneur gets. They get landing status, and at the end of 2 or 3 years, after they're able to fulfill their conditions, they go and remove conditions. So if you're coming into this country to start a business, you got 2 years to start the business, you go to immigration, you prove that you started the business, and then they relieve the conditions. So what I'm saying to you, and I just want to get your opinion if this would work, a caregiver is given landed status, she or he has an opportunity of 2 to 3 years to work in the field, provide proof that they worked in the field, and then they go remove their conditions. Will something like that work?
Yeah.
Something similar to that will work.
Okay, that will put you out of business.
Not necessarily.
No, but in the problems that we're facing, abuse, OHIP, and everything else. Because as soon as you come in as a landed immigrant, you got your regular OHIP, you got your SIN number, and you got an open work permit because you're a landed immigrant. That would definitely put you out of business. And
Put me out of business? No. And
No, but in the problems that we're facing.
But you know what, though? I believe that everyone who works in the social field should work themselves out of a business as part of proving success. So if that's what you're alluding to,
No,
that's
what
not
I'm
a bad
trying
thing.
to tell you, Ms. Mason, is that the problems that we're facing right now, you won't face anymore.
No, because a lot of the problems that we're facing has to do with the relationship between the employer and the caregiver. And you know, in this society, even for people who are landed immigrants and citizens, there are problems in the workplace. And so caregivers who come in just come in an extraordinary or different workplace
But
when
if
they
they're
live
landed,
in someone's home.
Ms. Mason, if they're landed, they will face less difficulty.
What would change, though, is that it will put them in a more just and equal position to come in as landing immigrants like Europeans did years ago.
Thank you, Mr. Kirk.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you to our witnesses for being here today. Can you hear the interpretation? I must say that that this is déjà vu all over again for me, because I was involved in the committee's consultation when the committee traveled through Canada and when the committee was studying temporary foreign workers and the ideas you are presenting today and your suggestions I have heard before, and I've heard them from across the country. Many of the suggestions you made are included in a report which was adopted last week, including the recommendation to have open work permits, allowing an employee to move from one employer to another. And there was also a recommendation to abolish the obligation to live with an employer. Do you agree with those two recommendations, and do you generally agree with the committee's report?
Unless they have no comment.
No, actually, you know what? I only heard the last part of the second question in relation, do we agree with the report?
Non, c'était pas sur le rapport dans cette...
Well, in fact, I mentioned several points included in the report, but I think Ms. Quash mentioned the fact that workers should have an open permit allowing them to work for several employers, and committee members agreed with that, as well as the elimination of the obligation for a worker to live with an employer. The report also includes a proposal, and I thank my colleagues for having supported it, a proposal which I put forward and which would require temporary foreign workers, including live-in caregivers. So it would require of them a few months after their arrival to meet with an NGO That is, the workers would be encouraged to meet with representatives from NGOs explaining their rights to them. What we learned is that these live-in workers live with their employers. They're cut off from the rest of society, and they really don't know what their rights are. They are isolated. And so under this recommendation, committee members believe that this process would help them escape from abusive situations and help them learn of their rights. So do you think that is a good idea put forward by the committee?
Run orientation sessions, and I see a direct relationship between the people who have the information, knowing about their rights and responsibilities within the first year of arriving in Canada, and the success after 24 months. So definitely, if people who come into the country under the program are allowed to get the information from the start, that will make a big difference.
Mais l'idée de cette recommandation-là, c'était plus que de leur...
The idea behind the recommendation was to make this measure systematic. I imagine that as things stand now, an employee can speak with people on the outside, but often they don't because they are forced to stay indoors. They are kept isolated from the outside world. They can't get out. So under this recommendation, under a new program, after 3 months, a live-in caregiver would have to meet with someone from an NGO. Do you think that this measure would be useful and help live-in caregivers?
In fact, we had a caregiver who was in a house imprisoned for 14 months and not allowed to leave. And so definitely when she got the information in terms of her rights and responsibilities, she was in a better position to make an informed decision that improved her condition for sure.
D'accord. Une autre proposition qui avait été faite pendant nos consultations.
Thank you. Another idea which surfaced in the course of our consultations and which unfortunately did not receive the support of all committee members was the fact that employers should bear the responsibility of making sure that recruitment agencies work in accordance with the law. We know that some of these recruitment agencies are unscrupulous and they perceive illegal fees. And it's very hard for the workers to get their money back because some of these agencies are based abroad or they disappear.
Alors, je voudrais juste savoir...
So I just wanted to know whether you agree with the idea that a worker who has been who has had to pay illegal fees should be able to get that money back and that these agencies be investigated.
I agree with the fact that the agency should be regulated. The problem, however, is a lot of the caregivers who we see that complain about the high fees that they pay up to some of them pay up to $10,000. They have no receipts. There's no proof because it's cash in most instances. And so I don't know in terms of being able to get that money back, how we'd be able to go about doing this because there is actually no proof. It's just a word of mouth, and we believe them because the stories have been very consistent.
Ms. Matheson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for coming here. I know that this is a very intimidating environment sometimes, and I appreciate you being here. I'm wondering, and I'm going to direct my questions to Ms. Mason. How often does your office receive complaints from temporary workers, and what are the most common complaints that you hear?
The vast majority of clients come into our office because they have complaints, because several other agencies serve caregivers and they do the usual, the normal things, help them fill out forms to extend permits and so. Most of the caregivers we see come because they have some sort of irregularity regarding their immigration documents, misrepresentation, for example, and a lot of them come because of violations of the Employment Standard Act in the workplace. In most instances, we try to resolve the issue if we can. In some instances, we do referrals to other agencies. In some instances, we help them retrieve documents with the help of the police. In other instances, we provide them with guidance towards making claims to the Ministry of Labor. But in terms of categorizing and looking at what the most common violation would be, I would think people who are working very long hours and not being paid adequately. But most of them, for example, work on statutory holidays and work 12 hours a day and only get paid for the regular 40 hours per week. So over time, most of them don't receive.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Mason, Ms. Thompson, one of the caregivers that testified on Tuesday, told the media that she was concerned because she'd given her passport and documents to Ms. Ruby Dalla, and that she called Intercede for help. Are you aware of this call from Ms. Thompson?
Yes, I'm aware of the call.
How were you involved, if you were involved at all?
This is a copy of the Bell phone bill that indicates that the call was made from my office. I was the actual person who made the call and spoke with what's her name, Ruby at the time.
What was the substance of your conversation?
Well, I called her because I received a phone call from a woman who sounded very upset on the phone. In fact, she was crying. And usually, because staff do not deal with crisis calls, when a caregiver calls and it's obvious that she's upset on the phone, I usually take the call and treat it as a crisis call. And in that situation, she was crying and she gave a lot of information pertaining to the situation in her workplace. And based on my determination, I got her permission to make a phone call. She gave me the number in Ottawa. I made that call and had a conversation.
A conversation with Ms. Dalla?
I had a conversation with Ms. Dalla relating the allegations about breaking the law, essentially. As I said to her, usually when we get calls from employees that says that their personal documents are taken away for whatever reason and intent, our step usually, we do one of two things. We say to the employee, in that situation, the caregiver, have you had a conversation with your employer asking for the document back? And in her case, she said she had asked for the documents on several occasions and she was refused. And so my next step is, do you feel okay for me to make a phone call on your behalf? Do you permit me that? And she said, yes, I made that phone call. And as far as I know, based on that phone call, the documents were returned, I think, the following day. And to me, that was the end of the story until it resurfaced in the press 1 year later.
Okay. Now, Ms. Dalla told the committee that she could not understand why the caregivers would wait 15 months to come forward with their information. Do you have any insight into that? Why would they wait 15 months?
I must say, before I respond to any questions, that we're talking about a situation that happened about a year ago. Actually, my call was on the 29th of May last year. And so I want to point out that moving a situation out of context puts it makes it hypothetical. And so I just want to say that as a broad statement before responding specifically.
Chair, point of order.
Huh?
If I may.
Stop the clock. Point of order.
Ms. Mason, does Ms. Mason have permission from the person that she's talking about in order to release these documents? Having documents as an agency or as a member of parliament, you must guard them and you cannot speak to them unless you have authorization. So, Chair, on a point of order through you, can we find out if Ms. Mason has that authorization from the individual she's talking about?
Point of order, Mr.
On the same point?
That's right. Ms. Mason, you understand that...
No, you're speaking to me, not
Mr. Chair, Ms. Mason has made a comment in reference to one particular case mentioning the Member of Parliament for Brampton Springdale, Ruby Dalla. She has only mentioned that case. Is she concerned about the fact that perhaps a fair question from this committee would be to
where you're going at something
No,
else.
it's very, no, no, it's not, no, Mr. Chair, no, no.
Well, you know,
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Karagianis raised an issue of privacy. You're going somewhere else.
And it's the privacy issue as well, because if she's going to make public one employer, is her next step to make public all the employers that she's called with complaints? Is that what you're going to do, or are you just going to talk about one particular case? I mean,
Well,
it's very...
you know what?
No.
I don't have to talk about
Ms.
this
Mason,
case.
Ms. Mason,
There are
I
privacy
would rather
concerns
this be
here.
with the members.
Can you?
Our privacy laws...
Mr. Bevilacqua is in the middle of his point, and we'll let him continue.
I have made my point.
Thank you. Over here, Mr. Dijkstra.
Mr. Chairman, these folks are here at our request. These folks have come here. They're presenting on our request to talk about this issue overall. Ms. Mason is free to speak about the issues that she wants to speak to. I do not think that it is our responsibility to try to intimidate these people while we're sitting here trying to work through this issue. And I don't accept that.
Absolutely.
And I think, Mr. Chair, that as we move through this, we need to keep that in mind. We want to move through and do things properly.
Okay, I'm going to say, Mr. Karagianis, it may be a point, but it's not a procedural point. And I don't think that the chairman is in a position to comment on something that's not a procedural point. So I'm therefore going to rule that it is not a point of order. Ms. Mason, you may continue on. We're not going to debate my ruling.
I'm not debating your ruling.
What are you doing?
Just a word of caution. Chair, you might want to tell the witness.
No.
Just caution the witness.
No, I'm not doing that. We'll let Ms. Mason, enough has been said. Ms. Mason, you can continue on.
I just want to say, when I introduced myself, did I say I had no ambition to be a politician? I needed to state that.
After what's going on here, you probably don't.
I am certain about that.
We're going to start the clock again, and this is your, if you wish to answer that question that was asked by Ms. Matheson, you may. If not,
can you repeat the question?
Ms. Matheson, try to be brief. We seem to have lost all control of time here. But
yes, I was asking about why a caregiver would wait 15 months in order to come forward, if you had any insights into that.
Well, I think the most appropriate person to answer that question would be the caregiver, but I can give you my take based on what I know. As far as I learned, there was a forum in Toronto where I wasn't at the forum actually, I was at another forum with caregivers at the West End at that particular time. From my understanding, at that forum where several caregivers were present, whoever was conducting the meeting or chairing the meeting invited caregivers to come forward and talk about their experience as caregivers. And this particular caregiver came forward and related a story that involved a public figure. I must point out, though, that prior to this whole political melee, I had no idea that the person involved was of that stature, was a politician. I only remember the name because it was a Budstone name. That's it. Okay. I didn't know who she was.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Karagianis, please be courteous. Mr. Dijkstra.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to continue to pursue this line because on Tuesday we had about 2.5 hours, just under 2.5 hours of testimony from both Ms. Dalla and from Ms. Thompson and Ms. Gordo, and there's no question that the two sides do not have any harmony whatsoever in terms of what happened with respect to the situation in the Dalla home. I understand now that after Tuesday's meetings, that certainly the leader of the Liberal Party has determined that Ms. Dalla's side of the story is the one that he's going to pursue and believe. I think that was a little early for anyone to make that kind of determination. And Ms. Mason, Ms. Babasso and Ms. Quash, I really appreciate you being here this morning to assist us with the greater good here of trying to make sure that the report that we present to the House is one that will assist you in your work and assist us in making sure that the rules we have in place and the legislation we have in place is good for the work that you do and the folks that you take care of. Ms. Mason, Ms. Dallas said to me, and I was the one who asked the question specifically to her about her conversation with you, she indicated to me the only call she's ever had with you was to redirect you to speak with her brother. I understand from what you've said this morning that is simply not the case, that you, in fact, did have a conversation with Ms. Dalla specifically about the passports that were being held by the Dallas.
I just want to say I was not privy to Tuesday's hearing. I only got a snippet on the news, what everybody else saw. I just want to leave it. And I have not had a conversation with any of the parties that was involved in that hearing. But to answer your question, I clearly recall, like I do routinely when employers break the law, I gave her clear directions that she was breaking the law and she had 24 hours in which to return the documents. I remember that clearly. And as far as I remember, the documents were returned at the following day.
So nowhere in that conversation did Ms. Dalla indicate to you that you should be speaking with her brother?
No, in fact, it was the opposite. I had a conversation with her brother and I was directed to her. And I remember that clearly because we were a small agency with a very tight budget, and I am always hesitant to make long-distance calls. And so I had a local call first. I have the numbers, and a 905 number in Mississauga. And then I had a call to Ottawa.
Ms. Mason, when you spoke with Ruby Dalla's brother, did he indicate to you that he had full and complete responsibility for that file?
No, I spoke to him. In fact, when I made that call, the caregiver had indicated, I asked her routinely who were the adults in the house, what was the job she was doing. She indicated that she was taking care of an elderly woman. She mentioned some of the chores she was doing. Some things were appalling to me, even if I thought I heard it all. But I don't want to put any subjective spin to this. I just want to stick to the facts.
Appreciate that.
And so she gave me, the caregiver gave me the number of Ms. Dalla and the other man in the house. At that point in time, when she mentioned the name, having had the same last name, I assumed that they were husband and wife. I didn't know at the time they were brother and sister. I know that now. And so I called him. He was very busy, as he indicated. And I told him why I was calling, and he said I should speak with her. And I proceeded to make a phone call to her, and we had a conversation. In fact, if she checks her phone records, she'd realize that I made a call that lasted very shortly. I didn't get to reach her. I left a message, one I know would get her attention, and she phoned me back, and we had a conversation.
So to be clear, you left a phone. You actually left a phone message for her to call you, and she did, in fact, return your phone call. How long was that conversation?
Her phone records would tell how long the conversation was. My phone conversation was with whoever answered the phone in her office, left and came back and said she was busy and wanted to know what the call was about. And I said to her, the person who answered the phone, what the call was about. And shortly after, I received a phone call from her.
And as we sort of move through this process, the one thing that we had passed, and I want to turn this into a more general question because we obviously had the caregivers here who presented through video conference. Do you think that through this process that the Dallas have given them every opportunity to be able to respond and question the issues that they faced while in the employ of the Dallas?
I don't know the answer to that question because I was not privy to the hearings. I don't know what the caregivers, I spoke to one caregiver, by the way, a woman by the name of Richlyn Thompson, I think it was. I had her name written down.
Ms. Mason, I
that's it.
I don't know if
Unless
it's
you
adequate
finish your
time.
answer.
Okay.
Huh?
You can finish your answer.
No, I'm saying to answer your question, it's I think it's their calling to answer that question. I'm not sure what they presented and how justified they feel in the time that was allotted to them and the process. I wouldn't be able to answer that.
Okay, it's now 10 o'clock. Members of the committee, I need direction to stop and start with the next round of witnesses or to continue. Mr. Dijkstra.
Well, based on what we're hearing, Mr. Chair, there's absolutely no way that we can. We've only been at this for about 35 minutes. We've had one shortened round. These folks have flown in here to sit with us. The taxpayers have paid for them to be here. I want to hear a little bit more from what all three of them have to say. I think we need at least another couple of rounds. I'm suggesting that we extend this by 30 minutes.
Well, I'm at the mercy of the committee again. We also have witnesses who are sitting. I think I see 3 people that's sitting at the back, and they were scheduled for an hour. So, but whatever the will of the committee is, Ms. Matheson.
Chair, I have another committee at 11 o'clock, so my time is
So that's it for you,
constrained.
Mr. Karagianis.
There's other people that want to present, and I'm sure that their testimony is equally important. I think we should thank these witnesses. I mean,
all those in favor of this group of witnesses, that our time with them is concluded, raise your hand.
Oh, sorry?
All those who are in favor that the time for this group of witnesses is concluded, raise your hand.
Isn't or is?
It is it's ended. It's concluded.
Okay, thank you.
All those opposed? We are going to conclude. We're going to continue. I don't know for how long. We're going to start off, one more round. It's agreed we're going to have one more round of 4 minutes for each caucus. And I'm going to say to Ms. Matheson and Monsieur Censure, I was very generous with you guys, so don't expect too much from me. Mr. Bevilacqua, Mr. Karagianis.
thank you, Chair. Ms. Mason, usually when an agency is looking for some funding and some assistance, and they usually go to a provincial member of parliament, a municipal member of parliament, or a federal member of parliament and say, will you please write a supporting letter when we apply for funding? Have you in the past asked for any assistance for any of the 3 levels of government, of any elected politician to write a letter for you? Okay. How long has your agency been up and running and supporting caregivers?
I would say around 20 years.
Okay. And yourself, you're the executive director. You are a volunteer with the agency?
No, I am working part-time as the executive director.
You're working part-time at the agency?
Yes, 28 hours a week.
Are you also on the board?
No, I'm not on the board. The board is independent. I attend board meetings to present reports and updates.
Okay. The calls that you receive, do you actively pursue all the calls such as this with other employers too?
Yes.
How many employers have you called in the last year in a similar situation?
In the last year? Oh, many, I don't know.
Sorry, you don't know?
Many calls.
How many, Ms. Mason?
I don't know for sure exactly how much. I don't keep every phone record. I can go back.
Sorry, you don't what? You don't keep every phone record?
I don't keep a record of every call that
Point of order, Mr. Whole bunch of people.
I can go back to files.
Excuse me, Ms. Mason, just give us a minute. Mr.
Stop the clock,
Mr.
please.
Dijkstra.
Chair, stop the clock.
Yeah, I don't know how to. How do you stop this?
I understand Mr. Karagianis' right to ask questions. What he can do is ask those questions in a way that is not demeaning to our witness, and also is in a respectful way that doesn't lead her to believe that she's that there's intimidation involved here. These folks are here. Please, I'm asking you, Mr. Chair, to make sure that we are polite and fair to these folks.
I'm sure Mr. Karagianis will be polite. How do you start this again? Carry on, Mr. Karagianis.
Ms. Mason, how many employers have you called in the last year to caution them?
I can check back and see. I don't have the number now. If you want accuracy, I don't have the number. I can tell you many employers.
Many employers?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to share my time with Ms. Mendes, Chair.
You got about 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes, Ms. Mendes.
Very shortly, I would like to know how many of the cases of caregivers that have been brought to your attention have had formal complaints filed in any court or
Who's over here?
institution.
In any court or institution?
Well,
I will have
at the provincial labor level or federal level.
You
for
want me to
immigration.
give you a number?
If you have any idea, percentage, 20%, 10%, 100%, how do you have an idea?
I would say conservatively, based on the number of complaints we've had, I would say 40% in terms of direct intervention, another probably 40% referrals to legal people, to other agencies, and 20% in terms of what we deal with and get resolved.
Solve
I would say
yourselves.
it's about that.
Okay, so formal complaints coming with your assistance, you'd say about 40% on the claims.
Just bear in mind, as I said, the vast majority of clients that we see come in with complaints. They don't come to us just for routine.
No, absolutely, I understand that. But those complaints are usually something that is directed at the provincial labor code or with the immigration law?
It varies. The majority of them, I would say, are violations of the Ontario Employment Standard Act.
Okay, so labor.
In terms of immigration, we wouldn't know that until there is, let's say a client applied for landed status and there is a citing of misrepresentation. That's when we would know about it. But in terms of the process itself, we don't handle those processes. Once it becomes a situation that deals with immigration deals with that, because that's when people apply for open permits and landed immigrant status.
Thank you, Monsieur Censure.
Monsieur Payet. Je vais prendre.
Monsieur Payet, I apologize.
Alors, premièrement, merci de votre présence.
First, thank you so much for being here. If I have time left, Mr. Chairman, which is probably not likely given what you've said, I will share my time with Mr. St-Cyr, but since he went over his time before, I will not ask him to pursue in his line of questioning. Now, you said that it is sometimes hard for workers to be reimbursed. For instance, $10,000 they pay to recruitment agencies, and then these agencies seem to disappear. Can you tell us why $10,000 must be paid, and generally why it must be paid in cash?
I don't know for sure. The trend has been agencies recruit caregivers overseas who want to come to Canada. Most of them promise them an employer on arrival, and that has not been the case. In fact, the trend for the last year has been caregivers coming, and it's almost cliche to hear the term released upon arrival. I could only assume that the reason why they take cash is because it's a way of making it not traceable, but that's my judgment. I am not sure what the money is paid for. I have asked that question to caregivers. When you pay that money up front, are you given a contract that says this is what I'm paying for? And it varies. In some instances, the agencies would offer a package which will include airfare. In some instances, they pay just to get an employer. It varies. In some instances, in fact, only 2 days ago, I received an email from someone overseas who said they paid $5,000 and they were trying to make a phone call and the number was not in service, so they wanted me to check in Toronto to see if that agency exists. So there is, it varies.
OK. Par rapport au paiement des...
As for the money paid to caregivers, their salaries, some of the caregivers arriving in Canada don't have a bank account. So do most employers pay them in cash when they arrive in Canada?
Our orientation program, I usually advise them they can open an account, by the way. Most caregivers do have an account. I advise them usually to take checks or to get a pay slip that would indicate the gross and the deduction, so they have it as proof in case they're no longer with that employer and they want to prove that the record of employment that they're given is accurate.
OK, mais au-delà de la recommandation, est-ce que vous...
But beyond the recommendation, is it your observation that the workers generally do open an account and that generally employers pay in cash? Any idea how many caregivers are paid in cash or by check and can deposit that amount into an account?
experience, the caregivers usually who receive money in cash, it varies. It's a situation where that's the choice that the employer uses to pay them by cash. Most of the times it's a situation where they are waiting on authorization, the employer that is, to employ that caregiver. In situations like that, our stand has always been to say to the caregiver, if an employer chooses to employ you illegally, it means that that employer is breaking the law. But when you accept that employment, it means also that you are breaking the law. And I say to them, it's a risk because I know most caregivers look forward to the day when they become landed immigrants. And I say to them, if an employer pays you by cash and that person is employing you illegally, because in some instances, employers would say, I want to see what you can do before I employ you as a probationary period, which also is not right. It's not legal. And so I usually say to the caregivers, in that instance where the employers choose to pay by cash, in that way there is no trace of payment. But what happens usually when employees or caregivers apply for landed status, if the record of employment shows that they were working during the period when they were not authorized to work, it jeopardizes their chance of getting landed status. So I usually say to caregivers, I do not advise that you take that risk. The reality is, though, picture someone who comes here who sometimes have no relative or very little support and is offered a place to stay, very little alternatives in terms of choices. They would choose to stay at that employer and condone the illegal act.
Merci, Monsieur Pay. Ms. Graywall.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much to our witnesses for taking out your time and coming, and I really appreciate that. Ms. Mason, have you received any threats, since the media started reporting on these very serious allegations against Ruby Dalla, or are you aware of, any person related to the situation who has received any threats? So please, could you let me know?
Not yet.
And are you aware of any cases, where employers, they confiscate the passports of temporary workers, as has been alleged in these allegations against Ruby Dalla? Do you think the police should have been involved in getting these passports back for Ms. Dalla, for Ms. Thompson?
Well, that usually it would have been the next step. But yes, we've had situations where staff actually accompany caregivers to the police to help them sort that report and then go to the house to retrieve documents. We have not had 100% success in terms of that. In fact, I recall a case only 2 months ago where the police actually went in and the employer stated they didn't have the documents, they only had copies of it. And I remember saying to the officer, well, probably they must have had the original at one point in order to have the copies. Nonetheless, that caregiver had to go through the process of reapplying to several places to replace the documents.
Mr. Chair, do I have some more time left? Mr. Chair, do I have some more time left?
Yes.
I would like to share my time with Mr. Mastro. Thank you.
Oh, Ms. Wong? Okay. Ms. Wong.
Ms. Wong.
Sorry.
Thank you again for coming to our committee. This is also a question for, actually not just Ms. Mason, because there are other organizations around here as well. I would like to ask, what are the pressures on caregivers to work illegally when they arrive in Canada? So, Ms. Amy, or Ms. Basco, or Ms. Quash, or Ms. Mason, any one of you can pick up this. Maybe Ms.
I'll start. The pressure lies on, for these women, for example, come here and they have families in the Philippines that depend on them.
No, my question is illegally. They are here already.
Yeah, they're here already and they are working illegally because sometimes they need to be constantly working because they have families that they support in the Philippines. So sometimes that's why they choose to work illegally, because they need income coming in.
What are the pressures on them? That's the pressure, right?
Well,
what else?
Also that they have sometimes to pay for agencies to come into this country. They've owed so much money that they need to pay back that money, so they have to constantly be working as well. So those are the kinds of pressures.
Okay, and that's the second question. Again, is for all three of you, and Ms. Quash, you feel free to answer because you haven't had the chance yet. Would caregivers ever face any repercussions for discussing their negative experiences publicly?
Yes. For example, in our experience as an organization, we've seen, I've been involved in the organization since 2000, and we've seen 3 deportation cases that we've walked through the system. Even in the public light, because if they go through the black letter of the law, then they will take the side that this individual violated the law. Therefore, they need to be, because under the program, any violation at all any violation of the law can result to deportation. So even in the public light, people can pursue the individual, the live-in caregiver, and be deported.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. Mr. Dijkstra.
Ms. Mason, I have 2 very quick questions, and I want to give Mr. Del Mastro an opportunity to ask a couple. The first is the individual, Ms. Dell, actually on Tuesday claimed that she had never spoken to you other than referring you to her brother. How do you feel about that? I mean, it's more a question of your personal integrity.
How do I feel about it?
Yeah.
I don't care, frankly. It's her word, and, she has a conscience, and,
Sorry?
She has a conscience, and, these are one of the occasions when I wish the childhood story of Pinocchio was true.
Well, thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I know exactly what you're referring to. The other question I have, perhaps Ms. Quash, Ms. Bebesso, either one of you could answer. One of the difficulties we have when we're in a situation like this, and it was confirmed by Ms. Dalla that the 2 individuals were paid in cash, the difficulty I have is with that. I mean, there's lots of difficulties I have with that, but specifically dealing with the fact that they would not be paying or receiving OHIP coverage. Is that one of the warnings or one of the things that you let the caregiver know, that to ensure that they are being paid and properly, because the difficulties that surround that are, for example, OHIP coverage may not be available to them because they wouldn't have been able to achieve it through the income that they have?
Yes, that's one of the things we point out also in the orientation. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, I'm very concerned with some of the things that I've seen here today. Frankly, I think I've seen intimidation tactics on display right here at this committee, and I want to thank these 3 ladies for their courage. You're representing people in our society that are, frankly, the most vulnerable. People often without status, people that are working often for people that are quite wealthy and have high-powered lawyers that they can pick the phone up and get behind them. And on Tuesday, we heard 2 very distinctly different testimonies. The opposition leader came out immediately and said he believed one was absolutely accurate, despite the fact that Ms. Dalla couldn't remember if that's where she lived or not. In fact, she had to be asked 3 times if that's where she lived. But apparently that was more believable than vulnerable witnesses that came forward that gave dates, times, exact people they spoke to, exact conversations that they were involved in. If vulnerable people in this society can't come to this Parliament and find somebody that will defend them and find somebody that will stand for them, isn't that disturbing? Isn't that something that you fear? That here in Canada, who can these vulnerable people turn to if they can't turn to elected officials, the very people that are elected to stand for Canada's for rights here in Canada, for the Charter of Rights and Freedoms? If they can't turn here and not be intimidated, where can they turn? That's my question.
I'm supposed to answer this?
Yeah. Who can you turn to?
Somewhere there's a question in there.
Who do you have to turn to if you can't turn here? If you can't find support here, who can you turn to?
30 seconds to do it.
You know, that's a very loaded question. Some probably turn to their beliefs in God. Because I always say the people who call themselves leaders and assume what we call power can't change the weather, and that's where true power lies. I have a statement that I was going to ask if I can present it. It will take a few minutes in the context of that.
Well,
so,
no, we're going to go to Mr. Bevilacqua, and we'll see how that goes as to whether the committee will let you do that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I want to, Ms. Mason, to know that I'm an immigrant to this country as well. My first job was sweeping sawdust in a factory as a young man, and I understand the struggles of immigration. I'm the product of Canada's immigration system, and spend a great deal of time, as Ruby Dalla, protecting the rights of individuals that in fact need the help of legislators. I was just wondering, however, when you were, Mr. Chairman, I'm having a hard time with, please don't interrupt, I really appreciate that very much, that the living caregivers, you said you represent them, and the whole issue of confidential services, rights and responsibility, you have obviously focused on one particular case. And I was just wondering whether you're going to bring many more cases in front of this committee, since we, as a committee, according to the questions raised by Mr. Dijkstra and others, have taken up a role that is going to analyze all the violations that are in relationship to the caregivers program. I want you to know that on behalf of the Liberal Party of Canada, we want to improve this program. And if you take the time to read, as I'm sure you might have, since you represent an agency that takes care of caregivers, our report, then you will find that the Liberal Party has actually stood as a party that cares about caregivers for many, many, many years. And I was just wondering whether you could ask, I want to ask a question, why have you chosen only to represent these particular caregivers and not the many others that I'm sure have faced the same type that they allege, the same type of violations? Why just these two? Why has it become just an issue related to Ms. Ruby Dalla? Why that focus?
I don't think we are focusing on it. This is a story that happened a year ago, and we are responding to your inquiry. So I don't think we're focusing on that particular story. In the report, I did say that we've had, issues of sexual assault and other issues. So this is not the story we on. This is an inquiry that you're asking.
No, actually, there was
I just want to remind you that this idea of coming forward with that particular story did not originate with Intercede.
Sure you did.
I just want to remind you of that, and I still hold that all the other stories that I alluded to, we still have a commitment to privacy and confidentiality. And so had this individual, the caregiver, not come out and choose, and everybody has that right, this is still a free country, she has the right to do so, and she exercised that right. Had she not mentioned in that presentation, in that forum, that she contacted us, we wouldn't be here today.
So you're basically representing them here, because I'm sure.
I am not representing.
Have they signed a waiver?
No, I just want to correct you. I'm not representing there. In light of the fact that she mentioned that she spoke with somebody from our agency, happened to be me at the time, I am responding to this committee in relationship to your inquiry about what happened. I still have not broken confidentiality. I still have not given you details about the conversation with the caregiver. I've still chosen not to do so. I just want to give you one tip, though. If I had chosen to do so, the story would have been a lot more detailed and probably hair-raising. So I just want to say I have no bias in this issue. As I stated, I have no motives, or I didn't even know who Ruby was at the time, and so if you're alluding to that, it's some biasness on our part by, supporting the caregiver in her story. As I said, I did not even hear what she said on Tuesday. I had no privy to the hearings. So I am just being frank and honest in this. It's a pity, though, that this has become a big political issue. I joked about it and said, for my 20 years in Canada, this is the first time the press has been so consistent about a political story. Usually, we are interested in stories in the U.S. About their politicians.
Thank you, Ms.
Well, I understand.
No, I'm sorry. You're well over. I'm sorry. Mr. Dijkstra.
Ms. Mason, you made a comment. I just want to be clear. You said that there are other parts of this story that would make my hair raise or make our hair raise. What do you? I guess I'm just going to be very direct. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think the caregiver, from what she said to me, it was, I put the category of what she endured in the case of abuse. As I said, I don't know what she told you. But, for instance...
Well, I can tell you, I can repeat what she did say. She said that she was mentally tortured and physically stressed. That's what she said to this committee. And she felt like a slave while she was under employment of the Dallas.
Well, for someone like myself who come from African ancestry, who knows historically what slavery meant to my ancestors, for someone to put the experience in the category of slavery, I think it's appalling, and that is an extreme hair-raising case, because we live in a developed country, and you don't expect to hear those stories in Canada, frankly.
Ms. Mason, I want to tell you that this committee is going to do everything it can to ensure that the report that we submit to the House of Commons takes into account the recommendations that the three of you have brought here, and I want to ensure you that you can continue to have faith in the political process, the federal government, and appreciate what you've said today. And I want to assure you that we are going to take everything you've said today into account, and that I'm hoping at the end of the day, when I get a chance to speak with you again, that you will see that changes have been made because of the witnessing that you've done today.
I'm still asking for 2 minutes, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
Ma'am, you can have the rest of my time.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Mason, go ahead.
Thanks. As you know, the world is now a global village, and Canada is highly regarded on the pinnacle of that village. If we believe that Canada is part of the global village, then no one is a foreigner. We belong in the places where we choose to live, work, and call our homes. If we believe that Canada is part of the global village, then no one is illegal. There are illegal acts, not illegal people. If we believe that Canada is part of the global village, then we ought to change our mindsets and discard the labels that we place on those who choose to call this country home too, regardless on their date of arrival. If we believe the strength of a chain is its weakest link, then we should take time to examine the ways we treat those who help to care for the weakest ones among us, children, seniors, and those with special needs. These weak ones are entrusted in the care of those we label temporary foreign workers, men and women from around the world who have chosen to come to this country hoping for the chance for a better life for themselves and their families. We label them temporary workers, yet we entrust them with shaping permanence, such as the impressions that they make in the lives of our children. When we treat caregivers with disrespect, then we also disrespect those they care for. If we believe that the children are the future, then let us show a little respect for those who are helping to raise the future of Canada. Are the children who live in Canada more deserving than the children of the men and women who are raising them? Caregivers are people too. They pay taxes, they abide by the laws, and they have hopes and dreams. If those of you in authority here want to do the right thing, then I propose a win-win situation. we can offer those who are now on the socioeconomic peripheries of Canada the chance to be inclusive in our global village. Those men and women who travel from around the globe are living among us. Many of them are caregivers. Some have temporary status. Others, for a variety of reasons, have lost status. If they all are offered landed immigrant status, then they will pay landing fees and taxes based on their income. After all, they
Point
are
of order,
working.
Chair.
Yes, Mr. Kerrigan.
We have agreed on 4-minute rounds.
You're absolutely right.
I have to point out to you, sir, we're way over that.
You're absolutely right. We've been way over almost with every question. Mr. Shorey, you have time for one question. I'm sorry, Ms. Mason, I have to follow the rules of the committee.
Okay. Can handle the truth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, witnesses, for coming out this morning. I won't waste too much time, but I'll put in one line that as my colleague, Mr. Bablakwa, did some odd jobs, I definitely also did sweep floors, unloaded trucks, drove taxi, all kind of work. And this is the country, this is a great country where with hard work, with honest hard work, we can achieve anything we wish, basically. But I want your comment on this. The Liberal leader, I'll quote his saying here. He says that it is my belief that the caregivers were not abused in this case. And he also said then further, quote, but we want to make darn sure, oops, that this story does not happen again. I like you to make a comment. Is that comment true?
Well, I would want to know what his definition for abuse is. It's a broad term, so probably the answer lies in that context.
Okay. Well,
I'm going to give you one more question, Mr. Shorey, and then we're going to cut this off. I'm sorry. One more brief question.
Okay. What do you think that, in your definition, was this an abuse to any extent?
Oh, most definitely. And I must say to you also that I worked as a program manager in a shelter for women and children, and I know what abuse is to the most extreme. And I would classify what I was told in that allegation from that caregiver that she was experiencing abuse. It takes a lot to break down and sob on the phone unless you're a very good actor or actress.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Matheson, you have a point of order?
Yeah, since Ms. Mason was unable to finish her statement, could she submit it so that the committee could read it?
That's a very good point, Ms. Matheson. If, your statement that we interrupted you on, or I interrupted you on, if you could make that available to the clerk, that would be appreciated, and we would distribute that to members of the committee.
Sure.
Yes, Mr. Kerrigan. Point of order, Mr. Kerrigan.
On the same point of order, Ms. Mason also held up, I believe, was a phone bill and some record of conversations. Could that also be submitted to the committee? I believe there was a phone bill that you had.
Okay.
You got the phone bill with you?
I have a copy, yes, and the original.
Okay. If you could do that to the clerk, we would appreciate that. And I want to thank Ms. Barboso, Ms. Mason, Ms. Quash for coming and going through a difficult time. We appreciate that, and I will suspend this meeting. Thank you very much. We're going to reconvene the meeting. Committee members, I need your assistance. We've got a bit of a problem. Normally we have a panel, and normally we give them an hour. This meeting is going to end at 11 o'clock because of members have to go to other committees. So I need guidance. We have roughly 20 minutes. We can do a number of things. Mr. Clerk, where have they all come from?
Two of the gentlemen are here from the Golden Horseshoe area, and the Canadian Labour Congress, I believe, has come from Ottawa.
So I need some guidance. I need some guidance in the committee as to what we're going to do now. Mr. Dijkstra.
First, I want to apologize to our witnesses. We obviously had some testimony that we needed to listen to in the previous witnesses, so my apologies to each four of you, because I know you're here under the same regard and have made the same time commitment to give to us. I would suggest, and if the witnesses would agree, that we not have introductory comments but just go directly to questions. That would give us, I think, a little bit more time to be able to interact with our witnesses, and if they do have presentations, that we accept them as submitted to the clerk, and they could be distributed through to us.
Is that agreed?
Agreed.
It's not agreed. Okay. Gentlemen, I want to welcome you to the committee. I'm sorry, I won't repeat what Mr. Dijkstra said. We do apologize for the time problem. I assume, hopefully rightfully, that you have written presentations. If you could make introductory presentations, if you could make those available to the clerk, that would be appreciated, and that he would distribute those to the committee members. We are going to jump right into questions. I'm going to suggest, as the same as the last time, 5-minute rounds. Ms. Mendez.
Very good morning, and thank you very much for being with us this morning. Besides very general questions, since I haven't read at all what you've presented to us, have you had time to look at the report that this committee tabled in the House last week? And do you have any impressions on it, any suggestions from what our recommendations were? I'd appreciate to hear from you if you've had time to look at it.
Yes, we have had some time to look at the committee's work and recommendations, and we appreciate much of what the committee has said in regard to the many points that we've been articulating, that especially on the temporary foreign workers program, that need to be initiated. Of course, there are some, I think, gaps in terms of some specific recommendations that the committee has made, but there's a number of recommendations we would concur with. And we would wish, given the subject matter you were dealing with prior to us being here to present, that the broader argument should be made is that what really is lacking in the temporary foreign workers program, as it is with the living caregivers program, is a consistent application of regulatory regime across the country. It does not exist, and despite all of the debate and dialogue you've been having here, still does not exist, and I think we need to put our minds as to how we can facilitate that process to happen as soon as possible.
Would you agree that applies to the refugee situation, the lack of consistent criteria, that it would apply also to the refugee situation?
Well, at least on the refugee situation, that it is purely the role of the federal government in regard to the process for hearings and determination. That does not fall within the provincial jurisdiction. And whatever needs to be done there is purely within the federal government, and it's much more easy for them to fix the deficiencies and the flaws. But certainly within the temporary foreign workers program and the living caregivers program, and also for undocumented workers, the federal government certainly has a larger role to play in assisting and, first of all, facilitating the province to do what is, I think, is right in many of the recommendations the committee has made.
And I just wanted to add, based on the recommendations, I'm obviously with the United Steelworkers and working with the Independent Workers Association, and when we put together, we were very close to Juana Tejada. She was the first member of our organization, actually, when we set up last year. and we did a lot of work in trying to change the law from the second medical. I want to get rid of the second medical. I want to compliment the committee for putting that as a recommendation, and I'm assuming all parties are in agreement to changing that law so that living caregivers don't have to go through a second medical. We did make a bunch of submissions. I do want to say, and I'm going to pass it over to Rafael Fabregas after me, who's the lawyer, who was Juana's lawyer and has been working on many of the immigration issues here, that it is interesting that we need more regulatory protection for living caregivers. We need a situation where they're treated properly, but at the same time, the one thing that wasn't dealt with in the report, and I want to bring it up because it's not about just individual employers, it's the fact that live-in caregivers come in as temporary residents, and as a result of that, they always will be vulnerable. So even if you bring regulatory controls, even if you put in 1-800 numbers, even if you have laws that that sound good on the books, when you're in a temporary situation and you are by yourself and you're basically what you would say an indentured situation because you're living with your employer, you depend completely on whether that employer is being fair to you or not, and to take a chance to complain, and when you're in another country in a different situation and maybe lose your right to stay in this country, lose your job, whatever, that you're exposed, you're continuously exposed. So at the end of the day, I think we believe strongly that we have to get back to a landed status for living caregivers. You know, if you got in a landed status, you wouldn't need all these other laws to protect their rights. But unfortunately, the temporary migrant worker program is a form of indentured labor. And we got rid of indentured labor over 100 years ago, and now we're back at it. And I mean, I haven't seen from any, I haven't seen movement on that. It wasn't dealt with as a recommendation. As far as I know, only the NDP report agreed to that. I might be wrong about. No, I'm not wrong. That was the only report that I saw that agreed to that position. I would ask the other parties to take a look at that, because I think at the end of the day, that eliminates abuse.
Monsieur Saint-Cyr.
Merci.
Thank you very much. I'd like to come back to the report which we adopted last week. The report included a series of recommendations on mechanisms to be adopted in order to issue work permits to foreign temporary workers. It also said that these foreign temporary workers do not constitute cheap labor, and that labor conditions must be fair, and that salaries should not fall. Now, as workers' representatives, I know that you are as concerned as I are about the situation. However, my question to you is this: are you happy with the committee's recommendations in the report?
There's some recommendations we would concur with, but I think, again, coming back to what I think would be the mechanism for protecting temporary foreign workers, which is the issue I think the committee was dealt with, we still have, because it is provincial jurisdiction, we have no regulatory regime except for Manitoba that has now brought in some legislation specifically to deal with the situation. In many parts of the country, we have no specific mechanism how we deal with specific investigation and a process to protect these workers, because they do fall under provincial jurisdiction. And despite the fact that the federal government is the one arm of government that issued the permit for temporary workers to come here, we don't have an agreement with the province as how the province will protect these workers. So there's a big gap in terms of the regulatory regime right across the country. And more importantly, if we were to achieve a regulatory regime, we need an enforcement mechanism, because it's been stated by my colleague just recently, we need to ensure these workers aren't going to be intimidated and afraid to speak up, to demand their rights are being protected. That is not, again, is not very clear as how that will happen because it is within provincial jurisdiction.
Ouais, mais c'est pour ça d'ailleurs, vous l'avez bien souligné.
Well, as you stated correctly, this is an area of provincial jurisdiction, so we could not include any mechanisms in the report because here we are at the federal level and we work in areas of federal jurisdiction. What happens next is that each organization has to make representations before provincial governments to get the protection mechanisms which are desired, but the federal government cannot do that. Further, the federal government, in fact, should do much more to protect temporary foreign workers. Now, as far as this mechanism is concerned, I understand that you have no problems with that. Now, you said that one province in particular forbids recruitment agencies from imposing fees on workers, that is, to the foreign temporary workers coming to Canada, and that only the employer should pay those fees. In the course of our hearings, one witness said that the recovery of those fees, or once the fees are recovered, they should be transferred to the employer. That is, if an employer, before even leaving Canada, was forced to pay fees to an agency which is illegal, or rather the employee should ask the employer for reimbursement, and then the employer should try to get the money back from the agency. Do you think that this approach would work?
The worker certainly doesn't have both the power, nor should they raise objection to paying fees, might further jeopardize their status to remain in the country and, for that matter, remain an employee of that employer. So it's critical that we have clear mechanism to ensure that in no form, shape, or way should the worker be forced to pay a fee in the context of having to come here to work as a temporary foreign worker. The burden should be on the employer. More importantly, should we investigate and find out there is fees being paid, I think the employer should bear the responsibility of reimbursing those workers. But again, we need a mechanism to ensure that would happen. In absence of a provincial regulatory regime, we're just talking in circles. It's not going to resolve in the workers being put in a better position unless you have some mechanism to enforce such a regulatory regime.
Merci, Monsieur. Ms. Matheson.
Thank you.
You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you very much for being here today. I appreciate the expertise that you bring to this. My first question, we talked about the federal government having an obligation to make sure that migrant workers and living caregivers are better protected. And I've read through some of your material, and you have advocated that there be health and safety coverage, better housing standards, minimum wage, the right to collective bargaining, a complete orientation, and overtime, at least time and a half for those people compelled to work beyond the normal work week. And I'm wondering if you could comment on that. In addition to, as I understand, your call for landed status for migrant workers, are these important components that must be there if we're going to do the job right?
Thank you for that question. First of all, I'd like to comment on the previous question about general opinion on the report. I'd like to applaud the committee's recommendation on the passage of the Juana Tejada law. I knew her as a client and as a personal friend eventually, and I maintain close ties with her family, and I can tell you that they're very, very happy to see that action is being taken to correct this manifestly unjust system right now. In regard to your question, Ms. Matheson, currently live-in caregivers who are on what they call implied status are not allowed or are not eligible for OHIP coverage. Now, that period of implied status is when they're in between work permits when they're applying for an extension, or when they apply for permanent residence and they apply for an open work permit at the same time without renewing their existing one. Their OHIP coverage ends as soon as their current work permit ends, notwithstanding the fact that they continue to be legally in Canada, continue to be legally authorized to work in Canada. And that's why we're recommending that the federal government step in and fill that gap. And that gap could be at least 6 months. It could be longer should there be a question on whether or not this applicant is eligible for permanent residence. And it could go up to 2 years. In fact, Juana Tejada did not have OHIP coverage from August 2007 until December 2008. She became a landed immigrant in September 2008, but for whatever reason that she did not wish to challenge, OHIP still denied her coverage when she became a landed immigrant. So something needs to be done about medical coverage for live-in caregivers. And this needs to be looked at very closely, and the provincial government has to respond to that.
Mr. Flecker, we don't mean to leave you out. If you want to jump in anytime.
Fine, thanks.
Ms. Matheson?
Mr. Youssef, if you had something.
Yeah, I just want to make the one point that the point that Ms. Matheson was raised regarding what degree of protection, both in terms of temporary foreign workers and living caregivers should have. I think that it is generally assumed as Canadians that we don't distinguish among workers, that we have one set of rules for these workers and another set of rules for those workers. But that is the reality to a large extent in our country. And it is important to state that in terms of this committee's role and responsibility is that we should treat workers equally and the same in every jurisdiction that they work in. And in other words, the law should apply. I mean, if worker works overtime, they should be given overtime pay. They should be able to access the same health and safety protection as other workers that are born here in this country, and more importantly, the benefits that derive from employment should flow equally to temporary foreign workers as should be live-in caregivers, because you shouldn't be differently. Because what we're essentially saying, we've got two sets of rules, and given the Charter of Rights in this country, it is fundamental we apply it equally across the board without distinction.
Thank you. Mr. Calandra.
Chair, I have a lot of questions. I guess I'll be focused on you, Mr. Fabregas, and I'm sorry, I'm going to go very quickly, so there might be yes or no's because we're running out of time, and I'm not being rude. It's just I want to get some of these questions out. Now, in order for someone to work as an employee, a temporary foreign worker, I'm correct that they must be legally resident in Canada, right?
Well, they need to have a work authorization from Citizenship and Immigration.
Okay,
yes.
so and the employer must have an LMO?
Generally speaking.
And they need to have, I'm assuming, a work permit to work for that employer.
That's correct. Generally, there are employer-specific work permits. There are also open work permits where they can work in any occupation. Okay. And the last, both today and in the last Tuesday, we heard a lot of disturbing comment with respect to working conditions, in particular, in this instance, at the Dala home. I'm assuming it's obvious that that there must be acceptable working and living conditions when somebody takes on a temporary foreign worker. Well, certainly, that's a question of whether or not the minimum employment standards have been met, and that's really within the area of the provincial government.
And obvious fair wages will need to be paid. Are temporary foreign workers eligible?
The fair wages is based on.
Sorry, I'm just with him.
Yeah, but it's a government responsibility.
I hear you. I have some questions for him.
Okay,
I'll get
but
to you.
I just want to be clear.
I promise I'll get to you. I'm not trying to leave you out. I just have a lot of questions on process that I need to have answered for my. I want to pay overtime. Are the temporary foreign workers eligible for overtime?
Absolutely.
They are, and I'm assuming that their wages must meet minimum wages, which in Ontario I think are $9.50 an hour.
Just quickly, minimum wage is exactly what it is. It's the baseline. It's the minimum standard. They're entitled to at least that amount or more.
Yeah. Okay. And now, with respect to the employers, I'm assuming that the employers are responsible for deductions. for instance, income tax?
That's a tax question. Well, there is a responsibility on the employer's side to remit taxes after a certain period.
Okay. They're responsible for employment insurance premiums?
Well, I can only, well, my knowledge on that is very limited.
Is there anybody else who can answer that?
Yeah, I don't think that they're required to pay employment insurance, but I might be wrong on that.
No. Sorry. They're required employment insurance. Caregivers are under employment insurance.
Okay.
And in Ontario, now, Ontario, they're under WSIB, they're under employment insurance.
Yeah.
And they're eligible for overtime.
Okay, and Canada Pension Plan contributions as well?
That one I'm not sure of.
Okay. And I know when I get paid, I get a statement of earnings, what I was paid, the deductions that are made. Is it reasonable to expect that the caregivers get the same type of
They need, by the way, and first of all, yes on the CPP.
Yes on the CPP.
Second of all, they need a record of their hours in order to get their immigration status.
Okay.
So there has to be a record of the hours worked because it's based on the amount of days that they have, and there has to be a record of it. And Rafi, you could probably explain sometimes what happens when an employer doesn't give records.
Well, let me just point to the document checklist for live-in caregivers when they apply for permanent residence. It lists under required documents a record of wages and deductions that is sent to Canada Revenue Agency by your employer, among other things. That is Form IMM 5282, which is readily available on Citizenship and Immigration's website. So, yeah.
Okay. So obviously record keeping is extraordinarily important for both the employer and the caregiver. Would you ever advise an employer to pay in cash, or a caregiver to accept in cash?
Well, nobody's asked me whether they should, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, and stands to reason that the employer is in a much more powerful position than the caregiver. If the employer wants to pay in cash, it's somewhat difficult for the employee to, or the caregiver to reject it because of the way the system is.
I think it's generally accepted that the employer has most of the power in that relationship, and they're generally speaking at the whim of their employer's needs, I guess.
I'm afraid, Mr. Calandra, we've run out of time. Gentlemen, Mr. Fabregas, Mr. Leibovich, Ms. Youssef, Mr. Flecker, we haven't given you much time, but I do thank you for taking the time and giving your views on this very important subject. So thank you very much for coming.
We do have
Excuse me, Mr. Leibovich?
He has a submission he'll make.
Yeah, you can make that available to the clerk. Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned until May 26th at 9 a.m.